These are 10 mistakes that will wind up getting you killed in Apex Legends. Number 1, healing in unsafe areas. This is such a huge problem for a lot of players, and it's honestly such a subtle thing. If you don't understand the layout of where you're engaged in a fight at, you could potentially heal in some dangerous spots. Now, map awareness will be key here, but also having a rough idea of where your enemies are. Some good principles to practice are healing behind any bit of cover. Could be a door, a rock, a box, a wall. I mean, anything. There's so many different pieces of architecture on every map that usually allow for some bit of cover. And remember the time it takes to heal. This overlooked aspect in Apex is something that needs your attention. A shield cell takes 3 seconds, a shield battery takes 5 seconds, syringes also take 5 seconds, and medkits take 8 seconds. So assess how much time you have when gauging which heal to use, and then focus on where to do it without getting shot at. If you're constantly popping heals but dying while trying to do so, then you're healing in the wrong areas. So start to think more carefully about where your enemies are at and where you're healing. Number 2, not healing soon enough. As soon as you take damage, an assessment should take place where you evaluate, do I need to heal here? Can I even heal here? Or do I just need to challenge on the damage that me and my teammates have already output? This one has a ton of variables for me to be giving any blanket tips on that applies to every situation, but a healthy habit is to nearly always heal if you took more damage than you dealt. This mistake gets so many players killed, especially in platinum and below. And yeah, I've talked about it in previous videos, but that doesn't change the fact that players still do it. So another good rule of thumb for this is if you're the lowest on the team in terms of health and or shields, and you're committed on fighting right then and there with your teammates, don't be the first one to enter and engage. You should be the last one, because most likely the first to engage will take the majority of the attention from the enemies. This also allows for you to play off any damage your teammates may have dealt. So if the enemy is only 20 HP, you have a higher chance of killing them because it's quicker to kill somebody with 20 HP than it is with 200 HP. So if you're already low, yeah, you get the point. What about those moments where you don't have time to heal? Well, let's talk about number 3, armor swapping. In some moments, you won't have the time to heal, but you may be able to get an armor swap. Now, if you're on mouse and keyboard, I would encourage you to always try to go for the armor swap in the death box if it's possible. Mouse and key can obviously move and loop, but they can also interact with the box and get a swap in less than a second. This skill gap is a huge asset for players as they progress in Apex. There's really no other way to practice it except in game and in these stressful moments. If you're on controller, you can still go for armor swaps and death boxes, but you just have to be super mindful of line of sight and how long you're going to potentially be in the box. Do not get greedy here. Standing still or just jumping once while in the box isn't a huge deterrent for players to hit shots on you. So regardless of what input, just always be mindful of your surroundings and remember where potential armor swaps are and are not. This is a huge thing I see in coaching. Players forget about the armor of the player that they just downed, or they forget that a white swap was right nearby and they're just committed on trying to get into this 1v1 challenge where they're low and the enemy's low, and they may not get the best of that fight, but if they just swapped real quick, they probably would have won it. So remember where armor swaps are at all times. Number 4, not considering the teammates of the enemy you are looking at. This type of tunnel vision is a double-edged sword because yes, there will be moments where you see that one enemy is isolated and that you realize you have the jump on them. In those moments, trying to take out that player, if you can do so without getting lit up by their teammates, is a sound strategy. But there will be other times, and probably more often, where you will have that one enemy weak, but that player's teammates have a great angle on you if you go to push the one who was weak. And not lose sight of this, especially as you climb the ranks in Apex, because the higher you climb, the more players have exceptional teamwork skills. And Apex is rarely a game of 1-on-1. It's more often a game of 3-on-3 or 2-on-2. So you have to start considering that when you're going to bull rush that one player, that they have teammates and they're probably nearby and they will make you pay. Number 5, misunderstanding the positioning of your opponents. This one right here is the center of most Apex mistakes. And while it's similar to number 4, it's still vastly different because in each and every fight, you must always assess the angles and positioning of all 3 of your opponents, sometimes more than 3. It could be up to 9 players in any given fight because you have to keep in mind that third parties are a huge factor in today's Apex. Now this thing right here gauges how you take fights. I came up with this saying that I tell players I coach, and it goes like this. If you don't pay attention to the what and the why, you will miss out on the how. The what and the why is what the enemies are doing, where they're at, what they're trying to do, whatever it is to you, and the how is exactly how they'll succeed or fail at it. Obviously, the wall hack legends bridge this gap, but without those legends, this is just game sense 101. You have to learn the map, the specific angles for each POI, and use audio and visual cues along with teammates' communication or pings to figure this stuff out. If you're solo queuing, it will be like playing Private Investigator, where you have to pull all of these little variables together within seconds to figure out what you're going up against and what is the status of the opponents. The reality is sometimes you will miss info, whether at your own fault or just because you thought it was one thing and it turned out that that wasn't the case. And this is a reason why I record nearly every game I play, so that if I'm confused on how I died, I have the receipts to back it up. I can look back and see, what did I miss? Was I just flat out wrong about the situation? Or did I just miss an audio or visual cue that really would have changed the scope of how I would take the fight? All of this stuff is super important, but I can't stress number 5 enough, because if you don't pay attention to where your enemies are at, you will get jumped quickly, especially once you start going against better players. Number 6, forgetting to use your ability at the right place and the right time. I don't care how obvious this one sounds. It's a huge variable in every fight. Look, abilities are a factor here. We've all been there too, forgetting we switched to a legend we don't always play because we wanted to try someone new, or because our teammate took the legend we usually play. Apex is actually crazy with how much attention it requires of us in order to find success. Not to mention the timing and placement of abilities truly can create a wide skill gap among players. So whether your ability is for offense, defense, or even mobility, be conscious of when the upside is there to be utilizing it. Number 7, using the wrong guns for the type of fighting you're doing. This is more often a problem for the team as a whole and less so individually. But let's say you're running a sniper and your 2 teammates are using 2 close range weapons. You guys are going to have a conflict when it comes to taking fights. See, one player is going to want to keep some space and try to get a knock from distance, where the other 2 are going to feel useless at that range and are probably more focused on closing the gap to their enemies. If the sniper doesn't have line of sight or simply misses the shots when they're trying to assist their teammates that are fighting up close, well, obviously it won't go well. The sniper will be extremely late to the fight if their mates go down, and it will create a huge problem for the team as a whole. Now, if you're solo queuing, it's really hard to correct this issue, as you'll rarely know what guns your teammates have until it's time to fight. And even when you do know, it's not like you can really control it at all. But if you're playing with a squad, try to get on the same page with what loadouts y'all are running so you can be the most effective team possible. If I'm running a sniper, I always want to try to have at least one other teammate on my team use one as well. If we're running close range, then I don't want to be stuck with a charge rifle or whatever it is. No, I never run a charge rifle. I have class. I will not use a charge rifle, okay? I'll use a longbow, all right? Number 8, bad drops, but more importantly, just not understanding where to land in proximity to where your enemies are landing. All right, I won't do this one justice in the short amount of time I have to cover it, but let's get into the real issues here. The way I see it, there's 3 major issues. First is not free looking. If you're just swan diving every game and not looking around, especially while you're being contested, you're practicing a terrible habit and you need to change it ASAP. Second is landing in a spot that doesn't have an out if you get bad loot or no loot at all. I never want to be surrounded if the place I'm landing at doesn't dish out good loot. I always want a route I can take to the next building or place where loot does spawn so that I can potentially have a gun and not get gunned down. Sounds good, right? Now, this won't be possible every drop, but it's still something to evaluate when you can. The third one is landing on your teammate where you both try to loot the same path. This plan will fail, I don't know, 95% of the time because there's just not enough loot to go around, and you'll either get the gun or your teammate will get the gun, and one of you is sitting there really angry at the other one. So always try to land close, but not directly in the same area as your teammate. The amount of random teammates who land right with me and then proceed to loot the same area as me is honestly perplexing, and I can tell you we always die shortly after. Number 9, forgetting to reload. This common mistake gets every player at one time or another, and the fix is quite simple. Start building a muscle memory of every time you shoot most of the clip, then press reload. If you shoot all of the ammo in your primary and then swap to your secondary, you can't forget that your primary still needs to be reloaded. So if you don't get the job done with your secondary in that engagement, you're either dead or you need to try to seek cover, even if it's just for a second, to reload at least one of your weapons, if not both of them. Don't forget that if you holster before you finish the reload animation, the animation will not complete until you pull your weapon back out to do so. This could allow your enemy to get the jump on you if you don't keep this in mind. Number 10. Third parties. Now, obviously, sometimes when you get third partied, it will be flat out unlucky. You could do nearly everything right, and then boom, a new team shoots you in the back or something like that. However, there will be times where your fight just took way too long, and this is asking for trouble. particularly on some of these smaller maps or in places that tend to be more centrally located. There's a ton of variables to this one as well, because let's say it's Kings Canyon. Well, you're getting third-partied anywhere you fight, let's be honest. But if it's somewhere like World's Edge, you can expect to be third-partied in somewhere like Fragment, Lava Siphon, or potentially Skyhook. And this tip is really, really important for ranked, where people are way more aware of third-partying each other. If a fight is taking anywhere over 30 seconds, something should go off in your head instantly to be like, hey, if this fight isn't going to end really soon here, we're probably just going to get third-partied, so maybe we just stall this or back up or whatever the case is. But you got to start thinking about that if you want to reach one of the highest ranks in Apex. Oh, I'm going to give you a bonus mistake that a lot of players make, and it's called the Seer ult. See, when a Seer throws his ultimate down and you crouch thinking you'll avoid it, but then you realize his passive still tells him where you are and you die, well, I guess this isn't a mistake, but simply something you can't outplay. This is just known as power creep. So to all the Seers you died to this season, try to sit back, take a deep breath, and understand sometimes the deck is stacked against you. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn about 2 crucial tips for every legend, well, I covered it all in this one here. Check it out next. Thanks for watching. Peace.